Om Shri Ramchandraya Namaha. In this series of Shastra Katha, today is the second talk. In the first talk, we mentioned how Valmiki got down to writing the story of Sri Ramchandra and how he taught two of his disciples, Lava and Kush, who were actually twin children of Sri Ramchandra, to go sing in the lanes and bylanes of Ayodhya. And Sri Ramchandra was informed about it, was the king of Ayodhya, and he invited Lava and Kush to sing at the royal court. And the narration begins. Sri Ramchandra doesn't know that these two kids are his own children, nor does Lava and Kush know. And they begin. Ayodhya Nam Nagari Tatra Asit Loka Vishruta. This is the first slok that defines and that starts our narration of Ramayana. That there is this famous Ayodhya Nagari, which is famous, extremely famous, and is made like kingdom of the gods. Ramayana is essentially a poetic work, and in poetry, you make use of imageries, you use all kinds of comparisons, and you also try to extol something, speak very highly of something. The story runs like this that in this kingdom of Ayodhya, there was this great king Dashratha who belonged to Ikshwaku clan. These names are just names. Let's not worry much about that. It's a clan. According to the Puranas, when there was creation, there are two famous clans. One of them are known as Suryavamshi and is known as Chandravamshi. Now, Sri Ramchandra was born in Chandravangsha. Sri Krishna was in Chandravangsha. It's just that people like to look for divine ancestry. You feel good when you know that your ancestors were so great. They came from God like this. Now, King Dashratha, he was full of valor, a very strong person, highly respected, honorable, and he was loved by the people of his kingdom. Unfortunately, he didn't have any child, either male or female. He had three queens, Kausalya, Kaikeyi, and Sumitra. This is a well-known story, and so we will not be detailing much. There's that these three queens had come from different parts of the country, and of these, Kaikeyi, who became very famous, she was from Punjab region. There's description in Ramayana and how far it was from Ayodhya, etc., etc. You might wonder how come Dasharatha had three wives, because in today's society we have monogamy. You generally have only one wife, but in ancient times it was quite normal. And in some religions we know that they still permit polygamy, but that's not that it's not that everybody does it. Sometimes they did it for some particular reason, like to safeguard the interest of their kingdom, to form alliance, or to have kids, etc. Now Dashrath was growing older. Maybe he was already 60 or so, or maybe 50. It's not mentioned. And because he didn't have any son, he's becoming desperate about it. And when you become extremely desperate, you pray to God. In those days, when this story is set, praying to God was not the normal practice. The normal practice was to do yajna or tapasya. In the previous talk, we explained both of these. Tapasya is when you focus your mind on one subject and dedicate your whole life towards it. Yajna is when you take help of sacred books and some learned Brahmins offer certain sacrifices in fire, hoping that these sacrifices will reach gods, and in turn, gods will remove the obstacles to your success. Because you have tried everything. You tried everything, but you didn't get the required result or expected result. That means something is blocking it. When you pray to God, when you perform yajna, or when you perform tapasya, that blockade is removed. So King Dasharatha requested his family priest, Vasishtha, who himself was a renowned sage. He was not just a Brahmin, he was a renowned sage, famous for his own tapasya, that is, spiritual practices. It was customary to have family priests. Even today in India, we have family priests. Family priests are more like, you can say, family doctors, corporate lawyers, family lawyers, etc. The way family doctor advises you what things you should be doing during a particular season to stay safe. Just like that, these priests, they were learned and they used to tell the family what religious acts to perform when. Vasisth himself was a learned sage, extremely learned. But he told King Dasharatha that let's get another famous sage, Rishyashringa. Rishyashringa is just a name. And he is a wonderful person. And if he performs the yajna, you should get the desired result. And this is something very interesting about the yajna in India. They say that if you perform yajna, like nowadays or in recent past, I read in newspapers that just to make a mockery of Indian tradition, some people were performing yajna, this and that. But scriptures very clearly say that when you perform a yajna, the priests need to be learned, they need to be of extremely high caliber. The person who is having these yajnas performed, their desires must be genuine. And the objects used, articles used in yajna must be perfect. It's so difficult to have these things because we don't have the tradition of yajna anymore. So chances of getting the expected result is pretty weak. The story of Rishi Shringa is extremely fascinating. His father was Vibhandak, another name. And Rishyashringa lived in a forest in a hermitage. And he had never seen anyone other than his father, or maybe he might have seen some of those young students, but he had never seen a female. Vibhandak was, for some reason, extremely angry with females. There must be some reasons. And he wanted that his son must never see the face of a woman. And on the other hand, this Rishi Shringa, he learned the Vedas. He became a great scholar. He was into tapasya. That is, he had an extremely highly concentrated mind. In the meanwhile, there was a king quite far away from that place. His name was Romapad. It's just a name. And he was ruler of Angadesh, it's another country. It so happened that there had not been rains in that land for a very long time. Now, in India, we believe that if something goes wrong in your family or in your land, then somebody has committed some very serious sin. Sin means doing something wrong. And every sin can be corrected by doing some prashchitta, some penance, some good act. And there is another shortcut. If some sadhu baba, some great sage, some sannyasi, he steps in there, he puts his steps. Like supposing there is some problem in your family, is still practiced in India. When there are some problems going on in a particular family, they invite their family guru or some saint and say that please come. And he's shown all the respect and says that the moment a sage enters a house or a land, things become auspicious. So it was believed that if a great sage entered that land, the sin will go away. And the advisors of Rome path said that there is exactly such a person in Rishyashringa. But it's extremely difficult to get him because his father Bhivandak, he'll put curses on anybody who tries to take Rishyashringa from there. So an elaborate plan was made and some dancing girls were sent. They all dressed like a monk, like a sage. And they met when the elder sage was not there. And Rishi Singh had never seen a female. And these females, they were dressed like sage. So they were extremely beautiful. Females, they have a beauty about them. He was charmed. And they invited him to come to their ashram, which was actually a boat. And he had never seen such boat. He couldn't even understand that this is a boat. He had never been out of his place. So exposure is extremely important in life. If you don't have exposure in life, you can land in very serious trouble. So once Rishi Singh was there, he was offered wonderful food, and he had never tasted those things because he had lived in acute poverty. Life of monk is quite simple. We eat simple food. We live a simple life. So now Rishi Singh was offered different kinds of sweets and drinks. He had never tasted. He was amazed at how come there are such beautiful things. In the meanwhile, they both moved towards Angadesh. And he was so enamored by these young sages, not realizing that they are females, because he did not understand what a female is. Now, the moment he landed in Angadesh, there were rains. So Rome was surprised. Such powers. Because Rishi Singh was a great sage. He was young, but he was a great sage. He had performed tapasya. He knew the Vedas. He had performed yajna in a routine way. So these three things were considered to be extremely sacred. Number one, study of the Vedas. Number two, performing yajna, routine yajna. And number three, tapasya, keeping your mind focused. King was so pleased and so surprised with him that he offered his daughter in marriage to Rishyashringa. So he got married. In the meanwhile, his father, who was extremely angry and ferocious, so he came in search of his son and then came to know what has happened. But somehow he was calmed down and he soothed. Now, Vasishtha, he told, there are two kinds of brahmachari. The beauty of Valmiki Ramayana, it covers too many subjects, unlike other Ramayana. Says, Brahmachari means one who controls his impulses. Says one who stays away from everything, stays away from female, etc. And the second kind of brahmachari is one who is totally devoted only to his wife. One one lady. That's what is practiced nowadays. Says Rishi Singh, for all practical purposes, is a brahmachari. Brahmachari is considered to be a great honor. Like it's very difficult to control your impulses. Somebody who controls his impulses has to be great. Now, King Dasharatha was surprised to hear about the story of Rishyashringa. So he sent invitations, and Rishyashringa came with his wife, and he agreed to perform yajna. He thought over the entire thing, and then he said, "Okay, I will perform Putreshti Yajna, the Yajna that can get you a son." Those of you who are interested in the Vedas, you will know that the Vedas have hundreds and thousands of yajnas. The ancient Hindu civilization, Hindu culture, Hindu practices centered yajna. And even today, those yajnas continue in this form or that form, not all of them. For example, marriages. Those of you who know about Hindu marriage will know that the custom is to light a fire, have mantras, sacred chants, and would be wife and husband, the groom and bride. They move 7 times around that fire. The whole thing is actually a yajna. Similarly, sacred thread ceremony, that's also yajna. So there are lots of yajna going on even today. We don't know much. And griha pravesh, when you enter a house, the traditional people, they still do that. That is, some yajna is performed. Shraddha, when somebody dies, offerings, that's also some kind of yajna, but not real yajna. It's more of a karma. Yajna is mostly when you light a fire and perform certain religious duties. Putrishti Yajna was performed to get a son. Just like that, we have Parjanya Yajna. If there is no rains in a particular land for a very long time, sages used to perform Parjanya Yajna, and it was believed that if the gods become happy, you get the rains. Parjanya Yajna. So different kind of yajnas were there. When the Putreshti Yajna was performed, now it's believed that those were the days when the gods used to come down from the heaven to take part of their offerings. And it's believed that even today, if you perform puja, if you worship properly, God comes and accepts. Your heart has to be pure. The process has to be immaculate. Mantras have to be perfect. If all these things are there, God comes. God, with a capital G, who is the ruler, owner, and sustainer of the whole universe, and also the gods with small g. They are those who rule the forces of nature. They also come. In the Indian tradition, Indra is the king of the gods, the small g, who control the forces of nature. They also control our different organs. For example, our mind is controlled by the moon. Moon. Moon is considered to be God. Now, this is not physical moon that we know. It's moon the god. So when this yajna was going on, and yajna was so perfect in every sense, that the gods assembled there. And whenever there is an assembly, there will be discussions. And during those discussions, it was told that Ravana is there, king of Lanka, and he's extremely vicious. And because of boons by the creator god Brahma, who had blessed Valmiki to write this Ramayana, he had become invincible. He also had performed tapasya. He had pleased Brahma, the creator god, and he wanted to live forever. Now, this desire to live forever, this is somehow inherent in human beings. They want to live forever. God knows for what. I would be bored if I am told to live forever. But somehow, some people want to do that. Now, Brahma said no one can live forever. So he said, okay, no one should be able to defeat me. But he says, no, that is also not possible. So he just left out human beings and monkeys. The word monkey is used, but actually they were a race, particular kind of race. But for the sake of story, let's go ahead with monkeys. He felt that monkeys and human beings, they're too weak to fight with him. And that was quite true. So Indra decided to send some of these gods in the form of human beings, in the form of monkeys, so that Ravana can be defeated. So Vishnu who is one of the gods, is considered to be younger brother of Indra. He came as Sri Rama. In later literature, Vishnu is seen as Lord Vishnu, God Vishnu, who is the ruler of everything. And by his power, he can appear in any form, anywhere. I said that Vishnu, the supreme God, was actually Vishnu who was born as the younger brother of Indra. So we have two Vishnus. One Vishnu is supreme God, another is younger brother of Indra. And just like that, other divine beings, they decided to be born as monkeys and apes and bears, like that. Offerings were made, and the result of the offering, the term is yajna shais. You might have heard of prasad. Now, whenever puja is performed, there is prasad. Just like that, after every yajna, there used to be yajna shais, prasad. And because Rishyashringa was such a great sage, and yajna was performed so beautifully, that Prajapatya Purush is known to be one of those divine beings who is the ruler and the owner of our ancestors. Not only rulers, they own. So if they want, they can just bless somebody with a child. They'll just say, have a child and you'll have a child, because they are the owners. They are also the rulers. In Indian tradition, that is in Hindu tradition, we have different kinds of spheres of existence. So there is one sphere of existence where gods reside. There is another sphere of existence where another kind of divine beings reside. And there is one sphere of existence where our ancestors, dead ancestors, live. These things may seem quite complicated, but if you keep listening to this series of Shastra Katha, these things will slowly become clear. So Prajapatya Purush, he came with a bowl of payasam, milk pudding, and gave it to Darshan and said, ask your queens to accept this and you will have kids. Now payasam was distributed among these three, and there was sharing and more sharing. And with time, these three queens, Kausalya, Kaikeyi, and Sumitra, they became pregnant. And on Chaitra Navami, Chaitra Shukla Navami, which is now celebrated as Ram Navami, Kausalya gave birth to Sri Rama. Then Kaikeyi gave birth to Bharat, and Sumitra gave birth to twins, Lakshman, Shatrughna. And sharing had been done in such a way that Lakshman became extremely attached to Sri Ramchandra and Shatrughna became attached to Bharat. And these four brothers, because they were born of the same payasam, they had deep attachment. And as we find in the story, there was no discord between them. Actually, all four were manifestations of one one single reality, God. And that's why Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, Shatrugna, these four names, they're still considered extremely sacred in India. And people often keep name of their kids on Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, Shatrugna. In the meanwhile, as mentioned, gods, many of these gods with different kinds of powers, they took birth in the families of different apes, both monkeys and bears, etc. Four brothers grew up learning how to shoot arrows, how to fight with swords, and they become extreme experts in warfare. And they also learned the Vedas. And we find that Sri Rama was extremely intelligent, and very strong. He could wield any weapon, and he knew the details of all the religious duties, and he knew how to behave with elders, he knew how to behave with juniors, etc. So all these four brothers had great qualities, but Sri Rama excelled all of them, as we shall see later too. In the meanwhile, by the time they were 16, another sage Vishwamitra. Now we have encountered, first was sage Valmiki, then we encountered Vasishtha, then we encountered Rishyashringa. India is a land of sages. In other lands, you may have one great person, two great persons, but India is a land of sages. Sage Vishwamitra arrived, and Vishwamitra is an extremely fascinating character. We shall see more of him later. So Vishwamitra came, and King Dasharatha was extremely happy because whenever a saint or a sage comes to your place, it's a matter of great joy because you feel that that is going to result in something good, something great. But for Darshan, it was not going to be immediate good or immediate great. Because Vishwamitra said in straight terms that look, he, he's performing yajna in the interest of humanity. And the rule says that during the period of yajna, neither he should speak a word, nor should he ever get angry. Now, Vishwamitra had anger issues earlier. We shall see later. He had anger issues and said that during the time when I perform yajna, demons come and disturb us. So we need a Ram and Lakshman to protect our yajnas. Now Darshat was terrified. He said, come on, they're just kids, barely 16-year-old. How can they go? He said, if you want, I can send my army. So Vishwamitra became extremely furious. Don't go back on your words. Actually, there was some kind of enmity between Vishwamitra and Vasishtha. And Vishwamitra always wanted to somehow hurt Vasishtha. Now, Vasishtha being the family priest of Dasratha, he wanted Ram and Lakshman with him. So we will have his stories later, and very interesting stories. But Vasishtha was a great sage. He pacified Dasratha and said, look, O king, calm down. Vishwamitra is the knower of all the divine weapons. Now, these divine weapons themselves are a very interesting thing. It said that when God created this universe, he needed to speed up the creation. And just now we mentioned Prajapatya Purush. So there were a class of beings known as Prajapatis. And they were born to speed up the process of creation. This process of creation we will discuss in the Puranas because there it's described in detail. Here it's not important. Now, one of the Prajapatis was Daksha. And Daksha had many wives. Two of them were Jaya and Suprabha. These are just names. And from Jaya and Suprabha, divine weapons were born. Actually, what happens that Hindus see the presence of divine beings in everything. In everything. So there is that physical moon and there is physical sun. We see divine beings, the divine force behind this moon and this sun too. For example, there is knowledge, learning. We see divine force behind it, Mother Saraswati. There is wealth. We see Mother Lakshmi. Like Hindus are trained to see divinity behind everything. Now, these divine weapons, they are deadly weapons. They can do anything. But human beings cannot get those divine weapons easily. And Vishwamitra, because of his tapasya, had complete control over all those divine weapons. That means if he wanted, he could destroy the entire universe simply by calling one of those divine weapons, about which we will see. Because Sri Ramchandra later got all these divine weapons through Vishwamitra. So once Dasharatha was convinced that, look, he has control over all the divine weapons. If there is any danger on Sri Rama, Vishwamitra will save him. So don't you worry. And that's how these two young princes, Ram and Lakshman, who were barely 16 years old, went with Vishwamitra. Just imagine these two princes who were brought up with extreme care and love in palaces. They were now walking, just walking, miles after miles. And if you calculate it, it's hundreds of miles in total. Now, Vishwamitra became extremely compassionate towards these two young princes because he felt that these two princes have grown in so much of love and care. Here they are walking with me. So on the first evening itself, Vishwamitra said, I'm so pleased with you too. I am giving you divine knowledge of Bala and Ati Bala. Bala and Ati Bala, I'm using Sanskrit terms because these cannot be translated. Says, accept this knowledge. For example, think of E equal to mc square, the famous equation. If you know that equation, and if you know the technique, how to apply it, say, in the real world, the result will be atomic bomb. Just like that, if you know Balati Bala, if you master it, you get certain qualities. Nobody can defeat you in argument. Nobody can attack you when you are not ready for it. Now, if you want, you can control your hunger and thirst for a long time. You can control your sleep for a very long time. Not that you will let go of it completely, but in emergency. And like that, Bala and Ati Bala, they are considered to be extremely noble Vidya. Vidya means kind of knowledge. Now, Sri Ram and Lakshman, they had Bala and Ati Bala. Later on, when we hear how they were in the exile, or they were in the forest, Lakshman used this power to stay awake at night and protect Sri Ramchandra and his wife Sita ji. First night, they slept between Ganga and Saryu. These two rivers, Ganga and Saryu, they meet somewhere near Patna. And these are physical locations if you look at. Now Vishwamitra was so full of love for these two princes. Went on telling some stories and this and that. And these two princes were never stirred out of Ayodhya, out of their palace. They are looking at everything with wide eyes and surprised. Sri Ramchandra was asking lots of questions, this and that. And then They reached one ashram which looked beautiful but absolutely lonely. Vishwamitra told that Shiva, Lord Shiva, had burnt Kama, the god of lust here. This story we will narrate you in the next talk, and the story will continue. The story of Shri Rama. Thank you so much.